What's up, everybody? It's JD. Welcome to Moneymaker Monday. It is obviously Monday here in New York. For some of you watching, it's probably Tuesday. So special shout out to all the people from all over the world that are watching or going to watch this Facebook Live. And today I'm talking about something that really, to be honest with you, cannot be ignored. I think for me, I am the first to admit that I was a skeptic when it came to cryptocurrency, when it came to Bitcoin. This was something that I kind of scoffed at, laughed at. I have a younger cousin that's been screaming Bitcoin from the top of the hills for more than a year now. And, on some level, I regret that I didn't get involved earlier. But, one of the things that I heard somebody say is never be the first in a deal and never be the last. So, I think it's important that for each and every one of us, we do our research, we do our prudent research, our own due diligence. And that's what I'm going to recommend here. Full disclosure, I am not a crypto heavy investor. I have about $4,000 or $5,000. Full disclosure, in cryptocurrency, that includes Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a couple of altcoins that I believe in. And at the same time, $4,000 to $5,000 represents for me, a very small percentage of my investments in real estate, investments in the stock market, investments in other things, my primary business, which is in my import business. So $4,000 or $5,000 in cryptocurrency is a small number for me. So what I suggest to each and every one of you is invest accordingly. I think that cryptocurrency has some legs to stand on. I mean, this thing has got a market cap of close to $1 trillion. I mean, at one point it was almost $1 trillion at its height back in early January. And I really believe that it's something that cannot be ignored. It's, cryptocurrency at its core is all about decentralization. It's about cutting out the middleman, cutting out human error, cutting out unnecessary fees that we pay. And I guess the best way to look at it is if you look at your life. This is the best way that cryptocurrency has ever been explained to me. What's up, Denny? What's up, everybody? So, as far as cryptocurrency goes, one of the best ways that I like to talk to people about is just imagine for a second all the things in life that annoy you, all the things in life that kind of inconvenience you, but you somehow accept about life. You somehow accept about the way things are. And you just take it for granted that that's the way life is. Cryptocurrency on a certain level is about breaking those norms, breaking those things that we accept about life, and really pushing the envelope and asking ourselves, is this the best we can do, or is more possible? I take a company like MediBlock. This is a company that I believe in. And believe me, I'm not here to endorse stocks as much as I am to, endorse coins as much as I am here to just give you examples of what some of these potential blockchain coins can do in the future. So there's a coin called MediBlock. And MediBlock was a recent ICO, initial coin offering. For those of you that don't know, it's similar to like an IPO, which is an initial public offering for a typical conventional company. So in the coins, an ICO like MediBlock, which released about I want to say like 2 months ago in November of last year. And it does a very interesting thing. Basically, it is all about creating solutions in healthcare. So basically, the healthcare system is one of the systems that's very poorly managed when it comes to information. For example, if you were doing blood work in New York City and then you were traveling to, let's say, France, and you needed to get some work done, it takes a long time to get the information from one hospital to another. In many cases, they won't even necessarily take that information, and they might say to themselves, well, we've got to do your blood work over. They might ask you redundant questions like, do you have allergies to this? Do you have allergies to that? When in life, you've already answered those questions. And if you really think about, when you go to the emergency room or when you go for a basic checkup, how much time is wasted in paperwork and administrative stuff, and not just wasted for you as the client, but think about the hospital themselves, how many people they have as paper pushers, administrators, people that are making human decisions on things that maybe could be digitized. And that's essentially what MediBlock does. It's a convenience for the public in being able to go to the hospital, go see your doctor and leave, not spend hours in the waiting room and filling out paperwork. And similarly for the hospital, not having to employ this entire staff of people that are there just to do bookkeeping and things, to be completely honest, that could be automated. So this is just an example of something, that an idea that exists where maybe on some level as a society we've come to accept certain things about when it comes to visiting a doctor, the fact that it takes a long time, the fact that you have to fill out paperwork, the fact that there's a redundancy where maybe the same questions get asked to you over and over and over again, the fact that transferring data from one hospital to the other hospital, to one doctor to another doctor, is not always as seamless as we'd like it to be. So that's one stock that whether they're successful or not, whether they're able to do it or not, is a secondary conversation. That's a separate conversation. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into any venture beyond just having the idea. You've got to have the bandwidth and the talent on your roster to be able to carry out, to execute it. So that's still yet to be seen by MediBlock, but I think the idea in itself is a fantastic idea. And, I compare this crypto boom, if you want to call it that, this crypto boom, I kind of compare it to the housing market boom. If you think about the housing market boom, early 2000s, or the dot-com boom in the early 90s, there are going to be some really big companies that come out of this, and at the same time 99% of these coins, these altcoins that you're seeing, are not going to be around. There's going to be a huge vast group of these coins that are just, on some level, they're either scams, or they're not well thought out, or they're not well executed, and they're not going to make it. So just like any other time in history, whether it was the housing boom, whether it was the dot-com market, you're still going to have to pick winners from losers. So just imagine yourself if you were part of the Netscape IPO when Netscape was first coming out, and maybe you were excited about Netscape. Adversely, maybe you were excited about Google when Google came out. But now think about it, 20 years later, if you look at the situation, imagine if you invested in Google instead of investing in Netscape. It's the difference between having no money and being maybe potentially losing all your money in an investment versus becoming a millionaire over the course of 20 years, just off of the fact that you got in early enough that you were able to seize an opportunity and take advantage of a small company that eventually was going to revolutionize the way we see things. So it's very important to ask yourself some critical questions. See, ultimately, there's a lot of hype right now. And when the hype finishes, when the smoke clears, as they say, at the end of the day, these cryptocurrencies that are out there, they're going to have to serve a purpose. And their real value, their ultimate value, is going to come down to the service they provide. How big of an audience is it? How important is it? You know, a lot of these altcoins are interesting, but I want to draw a line of distinction here. There's a difference between being interesting and being important. It's one thing to be interesting. Okay, this stock, this coin is interesting. This company does something that's interesting. But I would much rather be important than be interesting. Does my coin save lives? Does my coin have the ability to cure cancer? Does my coin have the ability to revolutionize some industry, whether it's the insurance industry or the voting, the way that we vote in public elections? You know, obviously with the 2016 elections, they're still talking about possibly some third party coming in and tampering with the election. You know, whatever side of the coin you're on, no pun intended, whatever side of the fence that you're on when it comes to the elections that we recently had. So there's definitely a need for more. And the cryptocurrency, the big concept here, for those of you that don't know, I'm going to break it down, Crypto 101, in terms of the concept here, is we're talking about a decentralized system. So basically, in typical life, you are, let's say you're on Facebook and you're posting a picture or you're writing a comment on Facebook. That information is basically taken, it's stored in a server, right? It's whether it's Yelp or it's Yahoo or it's YouTube or it's Facebook. They have a server and they're storing your information on the server. And, there's nothing wrong with that. The fact that they have your information, this is how we've gotten this far. So I'm not here to knock what already exists. That's not the issue here. We obviously have been able to make it up until this point. And there's nothing wrong with a company having a server that controls, that has all the information. The thing is it also gives them an inordinate amount of power. If you think about it, if you're on YouTube and you could have a subscription base of, let's say, 10,000 followers, and then all of a sudden somebody at YouTube sees something that you've said and they send some digital algorithm to just yank you off of YouTube, and all of a sudden everything that you work for, your subscription base, all your followers, everything goes to zero. Because maybe somebody had it out for you, or maybe somebody didn't agree with you. And this is one of the things that a lot of people in society have said is just too much power for a company to be able to do. For Google to be able to sell your information, all your search words, everything that you've ever typed into that Google box that maybe your wife doesn't know about, maybe your business partner doesn't know about, maybe your parents don't know about. We trust Google with so much. We type in words into Google and just assume that this is complete secrecy. But those words ultimately are sold. How often do we click on something like we might look up a stainless steel appliance, and then all of a sudden, for the next 3 weeks, there's nothing but stainless steel appliance ads in your Facebook newsfeed. So, it's not a coincidence. These things are happening, and we've come to kind of accept it about society, that this is just the way things are, and this is the way business works. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. There's a lot of people that have an issue with that, and that's where this whole concept came about, decentralization. Being able to, instead of having one main server, like Yelp or like Facebook have a group of decentralized computers, right? Networks all over the world, literally thousands of computers that are verifying the same information. And through that system, obviously, it creates a security, because now the information is being shared across so many computers that you don't have the risk of, let's say, getting hacked, like that central server of Yahoo or whichever company being hacked by somebody, and that information being made available some other way. So there's definitely some sense of security in decentralizing it, having it across many networks of computers that are basically essentially verifying the same information. So this is the blockchain technology. Bitcoin obviously was the pioneer of this. That's kind of like the brand recognition. People know about Bitcoin. And for those of you that don't know the history of Bitcoin, Bitcoin was created. And again, it's kind of almost like a folk hero story by a guy named, if I'm not mistaken, his name is Satoshi. And we don't even know if he's a real person, if he really exists or not. That's how crazy this story gets. But somehow in the 2008, 2009, when the world was upside down, this alt currency was created. And the mindset, the concept, if you will, behind the altcoin is that if our entire world goes to shit and basically our currency is worth nothing, having an altcoin, having like an alt currency where there was value, where you could have stored value in a digital form. So that's kind of like the genesis of Bitcoin. The fact that people were afraid at the time that the money that they had in the bank, and you guys remember this, when we weren't sure if the money that Citibank had was going to be backed if it was going to be insured just in case there was some major fallout. So this was a major thing in 2008, 2009. I think that on some level, living in the United States, this becomes less relevant. But when you live in a place like Argentina, when you live in some of these different parts of the world, Venezuela, where you have unrest, political unrest, this becomes a bigger issue where you worry. Like if you live in Cyprus, you might worry that your country can go bankrupt, and all of a sudden, all the money that you have in your account no longer exists. So I think that maybe this, on some level, hits the United States towards the end, only because we may not be necessarily feeling the pressures of other societies that have less political stability, less economic stability than the United States. But again, getting back to this whole wave, this whole revolution, James Altucher, he actually describes the Bitcoin and the crypto wave, because people asked him if it was a fad, and he said it's absolutely not a fad, and this is how he kind of explained it. He said throughout human history, things happen in three phases before something old becomes something new. There becomes like a new way of doing something. So James Altucher, who's also one of the poster boys of the cryptocurrency and is a very famous person, hedge fund manager, has been on MSNBC and all the business networks for many, many years. But he talks about the three phases. The phase one is theism. Phase two is humanism, and phase three is dadaism. So stay with me here. So let's just use, for example, countries going to war. If you think about it, many centuries ago, when a particular country wanted to go to war with another country, or a tribe wanted to go to war with another tribe, what would they do? They would pray to their God. And they would pray to their God that our God is stronger than your God, and they would pray, and then they would go to battle and they would fight, and inevitably there'd be a winner, and it was kind of like all glory to God. That was theism, which is basically depending on God to solve your problems. Now, as human history went on, people had a realization. Good, bad, or indifferent, people started thinking differently, and that was that in a war, using the same exact example, that more bullets equaled more victories, more armor equaled more success. So humanism came into play, where human beings were like, wait a minute, we have a say in this. So yes, we have the gods that we pray to, but at the same time, we have some level of control over our own destiny, our own fate. And human beings started to cultivate new technologies and new forms of warfare, in this example, in order to fight your enemy through technology, through tools. And that became the new way. And obviously today, in the modern era, we've come to the third phase in war, and now that's dadaism. Data is collected, and these wars are basically being fought by computers, by computers that are trained to, collect data, send signals, and, through this process become more efficient at war. So here we go from theism to humanism to what we call dadaism. And one thing about it, when you look at these trends, they never go backwards. We're never going to go back to humanism and then go back to theism in the realm of war. Now, there's always going to be some components. Doesn't mean that when we fight a war that we don't pray to God. Doesn't mean that when we fight a war we don't think about things like bullets. But in reality, the biggest thing that we depend on now more than ever is computers, is data, is machines. And that's essentially how you measure the strength of a country as far as military might goes. So you can do the same thing, and you can apply it to medicine. If you start thinking about the healthcare and the evolution of healthcare, think about back in the day. If you were somebody that was sick, or your family member was sick, what would you do? You'd call a rabbi, you'd call a shaman, you'd call a priest, you'd call your local guru if you were in India, I suppose, and you would pray. and your family would pray, and you'd pray to God, and you'd ask God for what? You'd ask God to, please take care of my son, please take care of my daughter, look over my family, right? And as we progressed as a society, what happened later? In the last 100 years, medicine has taken over. Now, does it mean that we stop praying to God when somebody gets sick? No, of course not. However, we went from theism to humanism, where we said, hey, wait, we have a say in what happens. We have a say in how this process gets to happen. And people started creating all types of medicines, penicillin, and all types of ibuprofen. Things became available on the market to become solutions for problems that people could solve through humanism. And then ultimately today, now again, more than ever, if you look at the health industry, even surgeries, there's so much robotics. Computers are doing trial and error. Blood work is being done in laboratories, and there's less of a human component and more of a computer component, what we call dataism. So you see the trend is going from God to man to robots. God to man to robots, or God to man to machines. And this is the general trend. And again, I say it, that when we go in this direction, we don't go backwards. Now, again, because we are human beings, you're always going to see components of all theism, humanism, and dataism in any endeavor. But you will see the growing trend is that we depend now more than ever on technology, now more than ever on computer and data collection than ever before. If you think about advertising, if you think about the marketing industry, think about the end use. Now, marketing, like when you're watching a commercial, that commercial that's being sent to your TV, or that ad that's being sent on your Yahoo, is being designed very specifically through collecting data on you, by doing research on you, by figuring out what your likes are, what your interests are. So the commercial they send you, the ad they send you, is different than the ad that they send me. If I'm looking up sports all day and you're looking up basket weaving all day, then we're going to have completely different data. So that's the way I want you to look at cryptocurrency. If you think about it, same thing. There was a point where we were trading gold, and before that we were even bartering. There was a bartering system where, if I had potatoes and you had shoes, I would trade my potatoes for your shoes. But inevitably that became an inefficient system, because maybe you didn't always need my potatoes, or maybe I didn't always need your shoes. So it became something inefficient, and they needed to create like a currency behind it. Gold, silver, gemstones, all kinds of things like that became more prevalent. And then ultimately, obviously, the world that we know it today is backed through currency, which is backed by gold, the US dollar, all these different types of currency that are out there today. And at the same time, it's not a perfect system. I mean, currency could be stolen, currency could be destroyed, and if something goes wrong, like what we saw in 2008, 2009, then it raises a question as to, well, what would happen to us if the entire currency system fell apart? And so essentially this is where Bitcoin came into play, a digitized currency. And through this digitized currency, what is able to happen is it's a global currency. It's not dependent on any government. It's not dependent on gold. It's not backed by gold. And it really evens the playing field. Essentially, it gives people opportunities. Like I said, in Venezuela, you have to always look if something is interesting or if it's important. Interesting would be raising money to create a song. Maybe that's interesting. But saving lives, that's important. If people in Venezuela had no access to money other than Bitcoin money that they could now use and go and buy food with, and that would be their means for survival, then all of a sudden, Bitcoin becomes extremely relevant. Bitcoin becomes extremely important. And that's essentially what all these cryptocurrencies and these blockchains are aiming to do, is to create a society where we start to look at all the issues that we're dealing with in society and to see what are the solutions that exist that maybe we haven't paid attention to. Maybe there's something out there that we haven't quite looked at in its fullest capacity. But like I said before, everything at the end of the day, you've got to ask yourself, what is the utility? That's going to be the ultimate value. You know, people are talking about Monero, they're talking about Zcash. Oh, there's like 1,000 coins out there. But ultimately, I promise you that when the smoke clears in a year from now, there's going to be like 1% of those coins that end up surviving. And, you know, a good analyst is somebody that researches, that spends their time researching, that doesn't just take it at face value that, hey, listen, JD, I don't care what the coin does. I just want it to make money. I think that's the wrong approach. I think now more than ever, especially with cryptocurrency, you have to be really careful and you have to study this stuff and be able to ask yourself, does this company solve problems? Does this company have a way of dominating? Is this company, when I mean dominating, I mean being so far ahead of the curve that it's almost impossible for somebody to come back, and it doesn't make financial sense for them to even be a second competitor because the first person that has a monopoly over the industry is so much ahead of everybody that doesn't even make financial sense. So let me give you an example in the real world. Like if you take, for example, Delta Airlines, right? Delta Airlines, do they have a monopoly in the airlines industry? The answer obviously is no. Delta Airlines has to compete against United, American, all these different airlines companies, right? But then you look at a company like Google, you know, this search engine company that's turned into so much more than that. And you think about how far ahead. There is no Coke to Pepsi when it comes to Google. There is no rivalry when it comes to Google in the market that they're in. So essentially what has happened is no one has really risen up to be a competitor of Google the way that Delta Airlines has so many competitors. So what does that mean? That means Google can be more profitable. Google doesn't have to price cut and compete against other people that can do exactly the same thing as them. So, you know, when you look for a coin, when you're looking at altcoins or you're looking at these types of cryptocurrencies, one of the things to ask yourself, is it important and does it dominate? Does it dominate where it's so far ahead of the pack that literally it doesn't even make financial sense for somebody to come in and be number two? So aside from that, you have to also ask yourself the problem that the coin is addressing. The problem that the coin, think about the size of the problem. Is the people that are going to benefit from the solution to this company's creation, is it a $1 million market cap? Is it a $10 million market cap? Is it a $100 million market cap? Is it a $1 trillion market cap? Like, and that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to finish up by talking about a company that I really believe in, and that's Ethereum. And Ethereum, again, do your own research. This is not stock picking, coin picking advice. You get to do your own research. But the company that I just personally believe in, Ethereum, is a company that does smart contracts, and that's what they're most well known for, is smart contracts. And again, the concept is decentralization, network of computers that basically produce the ether that creates that Ethereum runs on. And you'll see that there's a lot of people mining Ethereum right now. And the whole concept of Ethereum is to be kind of like an operating platform. The best way I can describe it in something that's real in our society is Microsoft. So when you look at Microsoft has all these operating systems, Windows 95, 98, all these different operating systems. And then software programmers, different applications put their apps, they put their code on top of the Microsoft operating system, and then it creates whatever that company is aiming to do. So it's very similar with Ethereum. Ethereum is a blockchain technology. It's created in JavaScript, unlike Bitcoin, which is created in C++. Basically what Ethereum does is, through this concept of smart contracts, they're able to create what's called dApps, like having decentralized apps that provide different services. What kind of services? Like, for example, there's ICOs right now, coins that are being created right now that are being built on top of the Ethereum application that are going to, let me just give you a couple of examples. Music. Right, so one of the biggest issues in music, and this was something that I know that Jay-Z and a couple of really prominent artists have been putting together to compete against Apple and other distribution companies to basically protect the artist, to protect the content creators of music, to have a revenue stream where it goes directly to the artist and doesn't require a distribution company. Well, that's one of the benefits of Ethereum. Again, same concept, decentralization and taking away power from any one main company, including a distribution company. So this is like one example of what's going on. I'll give you another example. If you think about authors, again, same concept. So, if you're a writer and you're writing content, and now you have this publishing house that's basically making money off of your work, how would it be if you were able to take your work and actually get paid, get compensated, get rewarded through blockchain technology, and basically cut out the middleman? See, a lot of creative people may not necessarily be the best business people. Right? So you've got, savvy business people that know how to create a business, how to create landing pages, how to do marketing, right? And then you've got people that are just creative. They're artists, they're singers, they're painters, they're photographers, but one may not necessarily, the artist may not necessarily be the most savviest business person, and therefore maybe their music never gets to be shown because they don't have the proper marketing team. So through Ethereum and the blockchain technology and dApps that are essentially being built on this blockchain, now it's going to it benefits companies that are going to be able to cut out the middlemen, eliminate human error, cut out all the fees in the middle, or many of the fees in the middle, and reward the artist, reward the person that's actually creating the content with the actual business funding and with that type of reward system. This is all possible through smart contracts on these blockchains, on the Ethereum blockchain. Identification. This is another major thing. There's a blockchain called Civic. So Civic is going to give everybody a digital identity. And through this, what's up, Randy? So through this digital identity, basically, it's like a global identity. Imagine it like that, where all your information, your credit, your how much money you earn, all of that stuff is available in one place. So it's like a collected data. And then when you want to apply for a car, or you want to apply for it to see if you're worthy of insurance, it's a much more seamless transition. You don't need all these administrators in the middle that are making human decisions based on something that could be made, a decision could be made with a smart contract, just by having the criterias, the code essentially written into the smart contract, and then it could be administered right away. So you don't have to wait 4 hours in the car dealership to see if you qualify for a particular car, or if you qualify for a particular insurance. This information would disseminate right away just through the criteria of the smart contract and the way that the blockchain is created. I mentioned public elections before. This is a big thing with public elections. Just with the recent elections that we had with Hillary and Trump, we're still talking about it today, about having all these old systems in place. This is the United States of America, and we have all these old systems in place, literally counting votes. It's absolutely insane. It's ridiculous, if you ask me, that in the year 2017, 18, and back in 16, we were doing it this way, as if we didn't learn our lesson from the elections that happened with Bush and Gore. So, there are apps that are being built on the Ethereum network that are going to resolve that. They're going to automate all of that stuff. So, there's many different altcoins that are being built on the Ethereum blockchain, and that's why I believe in Ethereum. I think Ethereum is here to stay. the primary thing, again, do your own research, but you're looking for companies that have intrinsic value, that have the longevity because they do something, they provide something that is really needed in society. So, for each and every one of you, use your imagination. When you start thinking about these smart contracts, you can start to imagine like what other things, like think of the simplest thing. Think of something in your everyday life that is inconvenient, and you never thought that it was inconvenient, but that could be improved upon. For myself, I subscribe to Shutterstock. A lot of our social media and website building, landing pages, video editing comes through Shutterstock, where they have all these photos, all this B-roll, all in one place, and you pay like $100 a month, and you've got access to all this stuff. Well, what if you could just pay the photographer that's in the Congo, or who's in Africa, or who's in India, who's taking the picture? Imagine if you could make a payment and pay him directly, as opposed to having to deal with Shutterstock, and really cutting out the middleman and saving time at the same time. So, technology always drives to make life more convenient for us. That's what we as a human society are looking for, is anything that's going to make our lives easier, anything that's going to make our lives more efficient. I mentioned MediBlock, being able to go to the doctor and actually just go see the doctor and not have to deal with filling out paperwork and having the nurse ask you all these questions that you already answered maybe previously. So those are the types of things that are primary when you're looking to research these coins. Like I said, most of them will not be around in 2018. Maybe 80% of these altcoins are already gone. By 2019, maybe 99% of them are gone. And when the smoke clears, if you've picked the winners, you've done your due diligence, you've done your research, and you've used these criteria that I talked about. Which company is in a dominant position in their respective industry, that it wouldn't be worth it for a company to come in and put money in because the company that's in first place is so far ahead of everybody? Does the company do something that's interesting, or do something that's really important, that saves lives, that has a potential solution that we're all looking for in society, or a vast majority? Does it serve a market? And what is that market's market cap? Is the market cap $1 billion? Is it $5 billion? Is it $50 billion? Is it $1 trillion? So when you think about the companies that would benefit and the respective consumers of those companies, that is what's going to provide longevity for the initial coin. So these are just some tips that I had in crypto. I am planning on bringing on some experts to talk about this. There's a big push now, and in terms of people believing they're going to become millionaires in 2018, and that may be so. What I'm more interested in, to be completely honest, is how can this cryptocurrency not only serve as a great investment for each and every one of us, being able to put down $1,000 and get a 10 times return and get back $10,000. That seems great. And at the same time, what would be also amazing is if these cryptos actually did something that was good for society, that actually benefited us. And that's what I'm most excited about, is how this blockchain technology that's out there, how could it make our respective lives better? But that's my talk for today. Like I said, I thought it was prudent to talk about cryptocurrency. I wasn't a believer until very recently. And at the same time, it's difficult to ignore a movement, if you will, that's closing in on $1 trillion. And if you don't think crypto can grow, just remember one thing. The stock market has a collective market cap of like $25 trillion. So crypto is not even $1 trillion. The world's demand for money, if you take all the collective countries in the entire world, the demand for money collectively is $200 trillion. So if you don't think a Bitcoin coin can go to $1 million when there's only 21 million Bitcoins that are going to be produced, you might want to relook at those numbers. $200 trillion is our demand on money. So what if these altcoins, what if this currency of the internet could one day be the solution, be the norm for how we conduct our lives and how we do business? So that's my talk for today. I hope that it served as the catalyst for you maybe doing some more research on your own. Some great places to look is YouTube. I call it YouTube University. You could find out just about anything about crypto coins. Make sure that you're careful in who you're watching. Look at the comments below, read the likes, and see who people are following. That's basically my advice to you, is to do your own due diligence, do your research, and never gamble, never be talked into something because somebody else thought it was a good idea. I always say that I can live and die on my own personal failures when I do my own research. But what I can't live with is when I didn't do my due diligence and I just trusted on somebody else and I failed because of somebody else's lack of due diligence. So do your due diligence, go out there, roll up your sleeves. Like I said, this is the time, this is the laboratory, this is the mad scientist laboratory, when the kids are asleep, when, when you can actually go and do the work, you can actually do the research. So, in business, this is the Moneymaker Inside. One of the critical things is it's more important to be doing research than to be entertained. I think that that's a big distinction that each and every one of you gets to make. If you truly want to be the Moneymaker Inside, stop entertaining yourself and start educating yourself. Start educating yourself with information that's relevant, that's going to actually, that can shorten your learning curve and maybe take 10 years off your career, 20 years off your career, or have your career take off in such a way that you've never imagined before. So with that, I end this. The greatest days of your life lay ahead. As always, I love you guys, and I'll see you at the top. Take care.